Joey is a duelist known for running several luck-oriented cards, and the signature one of the bunch is Time Wizard, making appearances in just about every one of Joey's duels during Duelist Kingdom, and a few more throughout Battle City and Waking the Dragons. But despite being arguably his most well-known card, Time Wizard has never received the kind of support, say, Red Eyes has, say for Time Wizard of Tomorrow, which isn't good enough in today's game, and certainly not enough to create a Time Wizard deck. Given that lack of support, we had a lot of green to work with in designing this deck. We'll always start off by talking about the premise of every deck, and when I say premise, I mean what is the deck's approach or gimmick. Most archetypes in the Yu-Gi-Oh card game have one, whether that be Crystal Beasts placing themselves as crystallized spells, Gravekeepers protecting the grave, or Blackwings being birds of a feather that flock together. So each of the decks we design will approach card design similarly. The premise of Time Wizard is, as expected, designing a bunch of monsters that work off coin flips and spells and traps to either boost those effects or make them more consistent. First up, we have Time Wizard's sister, Time Witch, who instead of destroying monsters, destroys spells and traps. You need to control at least one spell or trap to activate her effect, and if you get the coin flip wrong, your spell and traps are destroyed, and you take 500 damage per card as well as destroying her. Next, we have the big brother Time Warlock, who flips a coin to discard cards, either one random from your opponent's hand if you call it right, or your entire hand, plus 500 points of damage per card discarded as well as destroying himself if you call it wrong. And then you have to have at least one card in hand to activate this effect. After that, we have Timekeeper. This monster can't be summoned except by the effect of a time card, which includes his own effect to special summon from hand if you control another time monster. Much like his name implies, he keeps your time cards around by canceling out their effects if you call them wrong once per turn and allowing you to reactivate that effect again that same turn. Finally, you can only have one of these guys on your field at a time. Next, we have Time Manipulator, the tuner of the bunch who can manipulate the level of time monsters you control depending on the number of cards you've sent to the graveyard with the effects of time cards. So basically, it allows you to access effect and reward you for being able to call correctly the effects of your other time cards. And you'll see why that level manipulation comes in handy as we get into the extra deck monsters. But before that, rounding out the main deck monsters is the engine of the deck, Clocksmith, who is treated as a time card. If you call the coin flip right with him, you summon time monsters with different names from your hand, deck, and or graveyard up to the number of cards your opponent controls. So it's a great way to bring out whichever ones you need to wipe out your opponent's resources, whether that be monsters, spells, traps, or their hand advantage. But if you get it wrong with him, he pops himself and you take 500 damage for every card your opponent controls. Now obviously this is a deck filled with a bunch of weak monsters, but to solve that and also to modernize Time Wizard, we created a couple of extra deck monsters. First up, we have Big Ben, Master of Time, a rank 2 Xyz that can be summoned with 2 or more level 2 time monsters. And he has the effect where you can detach a material and get any of the effects depending on the number of materials left on him after that first detach. So if he has 0 left, you send your opponent's monsters to the grave. 1 left, you can also send their spell and traps to the grave. 2 left, you can then banish 2 cards from their graveyard. And finally, if he has 3 left, you look at your opponent's hand and send 1 card to the graveyard. Of course, this powerful effect has a hefty cost, where if you get it wrong, you wipe your hand and field and take damage equal to 1000 per card that hits the graveyard. The other boss monster of the deck is a level 8 synchro Father Lord over Time, who you basically can make with Time Manipulator and 3 other time monsters, or by using Time Manipulator's effect to change him and another one of your time monsters into level 4, so it only takes 2 monsters to create him. His ability has an extra kick to it where if you get the coin flip right, you can banish all of your opponent's cards, but if you get it wrong, you lose all your cards. But when he's removed by the effect of a time card, both players take damage equal to his attack. This can burn you, but it's also a sneaky way for a deck short on big beaters to deal that extra damage to go for game. And so this card sticks out among the rest because he provides an upside no matter if you get the coin flip right or wrong. Because of course, if you get it right, you can banish your opponent's cards. But if you get it wrong, you still stand a chance to burn your opponent for game. The first spell we have is the field spell Time Zone. You'll quickly find that just about all the names of these cards are either time puns or well-known time phrases, so get ready to have the time of your life. Anyways, Time Zone has a few effects, all of which are continuous. First, it protects you from taking any damage inflicted by your time cards. Second, you can activate your time cards as quick effects during either player's turn, which not only allows you to use your time monsters to disrupt your opponent's plays, but also turns your normal spells into quick plays. And finally, all about making things more consistent. Every time you need to flip a coin for a time card, you can flip 2 and choose 1 as the result. When paired with Timekeeper, this basically allows you to flip 4 coins to get the effect of a time card off. Next, we have a huge piece of the deck, Time Paradox. As mentioned, a lot of the support is all about making the coin flip aspect of the deck more consistent, and the premier way this deck does so is through Time Paradox, which is a continuous spell that will pop itself at any time you get a coin flip wrong, and if so, it turns it into making that coin flip correct. So basically, if you have this, you guarantee any of your time cards to go off. Staying with the continuous spells, next we have Big Time. Since this is a deck filled with a bunch of weak monsters, this is how you beef them up. Every time a time monster's effect that requires a coin flip is activated, this card gets a time counter, and all your time monsters gain 500 attack for every time counter that it has on it. But this caps itself at a 2000 boost because the moment it gets a 5th counter, it pops itself. The other effect it has is a protective one, where if you were to call a coin flip wrong, you can remove 2 counters to negate that effect. The final continuous spell is Time After Time, a card that helps you mitigate the loss you might incur from a wrong coin flip or any card effect that removes a time monster from your field. When that happens, you can add 1 time monster from your graveyard to your hand, then you get 1 additional normal summon that turn to try your luck again. Moving on to the normal spells, first we have 2 Time. This allows you to take stuff that your opponent has lost from your time cards, either a monster, a spell, or a trap. And if it's a monster, you get to treat it as a level 2 time monster. A great way to steal things with powerful effects, high attack, or simply more material for extra deck plays. Next we have kind of the opposite of 2 Time, which is Turn Back Time. This brings back any cards you've lost from your time cards in the position that they were in. So in the event that you do have to resolve the wrong side of the coin, you get a do-over. It can be triggered either by being sent to the graveyard by your time card, or by simply activating it when you've incurred a loss from your time cards. Next we have Borrowed Time, which is also somewhat similar to 2 Time, but accomplishing it in a different way. This is a spell that benefits you when you get a coin flip wrong by taking an opponent's monster, and it is also treated as a level 2 time monster, so again helping you to combo into your extra deck plays. Onto the quick plays, first we have Wrong Place, Wrong Time, where by discarding a time card, you can special summon as many clock tokens as possible on your opponent's side of the field in attack position, and they all clock in at 2000 attack. This is an interesting card for 2 reasons. First, it can block your opponent's field, although giving them up to 10,000 in attack isn't always the smartest thing that you can do, but it can't prevent them from making plays. The other benefit of this card is, especially if you go first, you give your opponent cards that count toward Clocksmith's effect. So the idea is to give them 5, then resolve Clocksmith to his fullest to give you a full board of time monsters. Finally, we have the 2 deck thinning spells of the archetype, both which add consistency to the deck. First, we have the Searcher Watch Shop, which fetches for you any time card from your deck except itself, but with the caveat that if you don't activate a coin flip effect that turn, you have to discard a card in the end phase. The other card is the Pot of Greed of the deck, Hands of Time, which in keeping with the chance element of the deck, can either be a -1, a 0, or a +1. You draw a card and reveal it, and if it's a time card, you can draw again and reveal that. And if either of the cards are not a time card, you stop and discard the cards drawn, so it incentivizes a time deck to be filled with time cards. This archetype has 2 traps to play with. The normal trap of the bunch is Time Bomb, which allows you to special summon any of the coin flipping time monsters from your deck except Clocksmith, then resolve its effect as the effect of Time Bomb as the trap card. So it's a great way to disrupt the opponent while they're setting up a board, whether that be through Time Wizard, Time Witch, or Time Warlock. The other trap is the counter trap Time Out. If you control a face-up attack position time monster and your opponent tries to activate a card or effect that will remove things from either player's hand, their field, or their graveyard, you get to negate it, and then, as the name Time Out implies, end the current phase after that chain resolves. The term remove is a very broad term, but the idea is to cover the various areas that the time monster effects go for and negate those. So that does it for the Time Wizard support. Hope you enjoyed. Would love to hear anything you'd add or change about this deck, and make sure you like and subscribe. Next up, we'll move on to a card from Yugi's deck, and certainly a classic both in the anime and in the early days of the card game.